Gentlemen, first off, the Democrats are seriously up against it, according to many forecasters, with the condition our economy is in right now. So they're doubling down on the abortion issue in advertisements and debates. Is that a good strategy? We'll find out. The Republicans are pounding kitchen table issues like inflation, energy costs, and quality of employment. There are red waves predicted from a tsunami to maybe a small trickle. How do you see this playing out, gentlemen? Tony, let's start with you.
So, by the way, I've always loved that name, Dick Trickle. What is it about that name that just is so like,
He was
what
a
is it?
great racer. Great racer.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I digress. But I related to racing is energy, and energy is the lifeblood of both NASCAR and the nation. And I find it interesting that we're at the precipice of this event called the midterms, and it looks, in my judgment, that the good news regarding the red wave is being suppressed by the mainstream media. They don't. I mentioned in our pre-tape, and I want to get into it now because it's another track we could go down. But it seems to me all the good news is being suppressed. Even some of the local races where I'm at, they don't want to talk about what may be coming. And I think they do that because they want to you just basically discourage people from showing up and encourage their side to show up because there's all these attack and scare ads. And they have to do, as you point out, Chris, with abortion, with women's right to choose murder. Just saying. And I'm not like a super strong, must be banned. I think the original concepts of limited, rare, all those things were, I think, right, but the left took it to an extreme, and now the extreme is, in some cases, wanting to be able to terminate the child after birth, which is like murder last time I checked. Just, I think that's what it is. And that's where that's why exactly, Chris, I don't think this abortion message is going to resonate with many because most people don't think in terms of, gee, my child's born, and I like having the right to be able to kill it for 30 days after it's born. Literally, there is something called paternal authority. Pete, check me on this. Something called paternal authority in the Roman Empire. Basically, if you were a dad and you had a child, you could murder that child at any time as long as they were under your roof. So I just don't think it's a good idea to return to the first century AD with the idea that a parent can kill the child at any time after they're born. Just saying. I think we've moved past that, right? I mean, as a society, have we not moved past that? But so to think that the Democrats want to return us to the first century AD, it's kind of insane, but it's in touch with their inner lack of morality. Just saying. So we are focused on the economy. They're doing everything they can to hide it. They're trying everything they can right now to dump more fuel into the economy just to get them over the finish line. And let me say this and be very clear. If you are listening to the sound of my voice, the Democrats, especially Joe Biden, could care less. If you have enough money to pay for energy, enough energy to pay for to heat your house, they could care less as long as you vote for them on the first Tuesday of November and you elect them. After that, they could care less what happens to you. They will go about trying to make sure that the economy benefits their big donors, and they could care less about you. Just that's what they're doing. And if you can't see that, I recommend you get some sort of help to figure out what's going on because they want to do nothing to benefit the average citizen other than have you vote for them, trick you into voting for them, and then you give them the power and they give you nothing. So just saying.
I will say this. Stacey Abrams had decided to juxtapose the two and recently said in the gubernatorial debate in Georgia that abortion is an economic issue. So
of course.
People, that's interesting too. First off, it didn't even come out very well. But wait, I did something wrong. I apologize. I have to backtrack on this because if the mainstream media is going to do this, I'm going to do this properly. Excuse me. 1, 2, 3. Take 30. Election denier. Stacey Abrams. There we go. Is that much better? But she's
president of Earth. Chris. She's the president of Earth. Just
Oh
remember,
yeah, I forgot about that. I don't
president
know
of
if
Earth.
I have never seen Star Wars Discovery, and I don't plan
Star
to.
Trek, Star Trek.
Star Trek, Star
Don't
Wars.
don't demean
I'm
don't
only
demean
kidding.
Star Trek. You're gonna get us in real trouble here, Chris.
What do you mean?
You
Don't
start
demean
doing
Star
that,
Trek?
you're gonna get all sorts of hate sent our way by the Star Trek.
Gene Roddenberry's
Trek,
rolling over
whatever.
in his grave.
Hold on a second.
I know.
I
I
actually,
know.
I actually think I was doing them a favor by calling it Star Wars because if you think about it, you're really defaming Star Trek by making Stacey Abrams the president of anything over there in that universe. So, but she's trying to insinuate that you can save money by aborting a child, basically. That's not the way to approach these things.
Well, Margaret Sanger would be proud. Just saying.
Oh.
I think that's Margaret Sanger's approach. Absolutely. I think that's taken right out of Margaret Sanger's approach for justifying abortion clinics. Right? I mean, well, I'm sure if you go back and study Margaret Sanger, who Hillary Clinton is a fan of, I think
yes.
they all feel that way. Just saying.
That's right. Oh, you forgot election denier, Hillary Clinton. Okay, remember that.
That too. Yeah.
Yes, that.
Well,
It's
thank
funny.
God Carrie Lake's calling them all out on. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that because the mainstream media. I am very tired of this mainstream media calling anybody who questions integrity of elections in 2020 election deniers or proponents of the big lie. The fact is, the big lie was back in 2016. The Russian collusion hoax.
Yeah.
That was a huger lie.
Well, that was.
But it depends on who's in charge, and it depends on who's covering it. And that's another issue when it comes to the midterm elections.
Yeah, I think on the election denier thing, they've really got themselves in trouble because the issue of the integrity of the election itself has been something that's been particularly highlighted by the left for decades. I mean, for most of the U.S.'s modern election history, this has come up, and now you can't really use that anymore. And so, not only did it trap Stacey Abrams in, who is pretty much the godmother of the modern election denying movement. I mean, she's the one that basically Trump copied, this kind of idea that elections could be stolen from. But you can't. I wonder if the whole civil rights movement may have really shot themselves in the foot because they can't throw themselves out. So if you do see a red wave hit this cycle, how do they come out and say that people were disenfranchised? I mean, that's really tough for them to do. I mean, there's some great videos out there that even MIT back a few years ago, had shown. They actually put out all of these computers and then shown how even the electronic computer systems can be manipulated. Right? You'd never see any Ivy League university wouldn't even dream of doing something like that today. And I'm not saying that happened in any way, but these are legitimate things that should be explored and throughout world history, and in Europe has addressed this as well. Africa has addressed this too, the issues of election integrity. And this is something that's still done there, but now it's completely taboo within the US media, which I think is quite funny going forward of how they're going to address that, because I know they're going to want to pull that lever again. And how do they get away with it? I'm sure you'll see something where they say that this time it's different somehow.
Well, to that point, Tim, Chunk Yogurt, what's his name? Sink Yogurt?
Oh, the TYT guy, the Young Turks guy. Chunk Uger, Felix Unger.
I've been on with him. I should know his name. Just saying. I feel bad. Well, I really don't feel bad. Anyway, he basically has said, he's laid the groundwork for what you just said, that somehow not passing election reform is the reason why the left's about to lose. Like, oh yes, all these voters being suppressed. But to your point also, Tim, they've had record turnout in Georgia, in North Carolina, and other places in the primaries. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have like record turnout in the primaries and say, oh, people are being suppressed.
Yeah, I mean, that's outright fraud. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, look, I've when I was living in New York, I actually wanted to see for myself how a lot of this worked. And so I was, I've been a poll watcher. I've also been a poll worker, right? So I've been paid by the New York City Board of Elections to actually oversee the voting. And it was amazing how you saw where in the New York system where you have Democrats and Republicans there. And you got folks, even the Democrats, saying, well, how do we know who people are if you don't have any kind of ID or anything like that? The way it's supposed to work is you're literally supposed to know who everybody in your book is. and then be able to, call out whether that person is the right person or not, or challenge them to then vote on paper. Which, if you really think about it, that's absolutely insane. And when you talk about systems of voter suppression, I mean, you just sit there and you could potentially challenge, let's say, every person of color that comes in. Well, that's not who they say they are, and then they have to vote on paper. Like there's these simple fixes that have been put in places like Georgia that still aren't around in New York. And so I almost think it's incredibly hypocritical when you're looking at reformed voting laws of where it's, one person, one vote, that's not being protected in a lot of these states like New York. And people are ragging on Georgia for it when they've clearly put in very progressive laws that guarantee the integrity of the ballot box.
People who like to say that, we don't have voter fraud in the United States, I would encourage them to go read Robert Caro's biography of Lyndon Johnson, and particularly Johnson's first few elections.
Oh yeah,
into the Senate, and the organization that he set up that was then in place apparently through the rest of his political career, which essentially guaranteed him election in Texas. Guaranteed. There was no to read Caro's account of this was not something where they were guessing at the outcome. They weren't guessing at the outcome. There would be a phone call to some folks in a couple of key counties in Texas where they would say, really subtle things like, we need 4,000 plus votes, and so they would overstuff the boxes to make sure he had a 4,000 vote lead coming out of that county. I mean, it was very clear, very cut and dried, and it was in place. That was in place in the 40s and 50s. So the idea that we're somehow we're pristine and that this kind of thing doesn't take place is just silly.
Yeah, I just kind of find it so hilarious because, again, if you said this back in, prior to the 2020 election, if you said that there's no such thing as voter fraud, it's never been an issue, I think that would be like the civil rights equivalent of saying there were never segregated diners, right? Like, wow, you're crazy. And now it's like, I think they've almost realized that this is, again, still a lever they want to use, but how do they play that card again? And I think they're getting in a whole lot of trouble for it. But I guess I want to, if I don't mind, segueing back a little bit more to some of the things we were talking about before. Chris had mentioned when he opened about, talking about all the raucous debates. And I'd almost like to challenge him on that one, because at least where the part of the world that I'm looking at, a lot of it's the Northeast, some other areas, it's almost like you're seeing the opposite of that, right? You're seeing candidates, especially like the establishment, that doesn't want to debate, right? We've seen let's say the Walker Warnock debates, a couple others, but it's like a complete concerted effort not to debate, not to stand by your record. In New York, we've got it's still leaning blue, but a governor's race against Kathy Hochul, who took over when one of the Cuomo brothers got ousted. And she's, I think, maybe agreed to one debate. We're not quite sure. That election's getting more and more. And the other big race, which everybody knows, is Letitia James, the Attorney General. She's been going after Trump, doing a lot of things. She's also the first Black woman to ever take the role of Attorney General in New York. She has outright refused to debate and stand by her record against Michael Henry, who some polls have actually shown him being up a point. So I don't know if there's been enough of banging the drum on these folks who are asking for our votes, but won't even stand up and be accountable for their record of the things that they're saying. And also with regards to New York, and maybe I'm saying too much, I should stop it there, but New York is the quintessential state where you're talking about two things and two things only: Donald Trump and Roe v. Wade. And neither of those issues has any bearing in the state of New York.
Here's the issue.
This is an entire election kind of based on nothing.
Oh, here's the issue when it comes to debating and front runners. Kathy Hochul is taking the Mario Cuomo tack. Mario Cuomo would not enter debates against his opponents for a long time. Main reason was because incumbents who are ahead by, or who feel themselves ahead by quite a bit, know that they only have points to lose when they go out in a debate, because they'll be challenged by an opponent or a series of opponents or a few opponents who are playing with house money. So they can just do nothing but challenge and gain a few points. In the case of Zeldin versus Hochul, what the Hochul camp would likely be afraid of, and I'm not in their inner circle, obviously, because nobody wants me there. The fact is, though, if you think about it, Lee Zeldin would have the opportunity in a debate to change the minds of people living in inner cities. And I'm not talking about flipping New York City to vote for a Republican. I'm talking about what Donald Trump did when he was campaigning, going to major cities and saying, you know what? I can't flip the entire city of, I'll use Philadelphia as an example on the Trump side. But if I go there and campaign, 10% of the people there, maybe 15% of the people there might turn and vote for me, and that could flip the state. Whereas people across New York State, the Empire State, could be watching a debate between Hochul and Zeldin, watching Zeldin maybe to present himself as reasonable on crime, as non-threatening a presence as George Pataki is, and pretty like George Pataki in a lot of ways. Whereas you could sway 10% of those people who might have otherwise voted for Hochul inside a major city, even if it's 5%, that could turn over the entire election to him. So she knows she has nothing to lose. As far as Warnock and Herschel Walker, they had the one debate, and that was contentious. The debates that are happening now, obviously they're being played up more in the media, but yeah, they were all pretty contentious. And those are close races. But the fact is, if you're up by 5-6 points, you only have something to lose, and you don't have anything to gain.
Well, let me ask a question of Tim then on this issue, because I've seen AOC, Sandy, has been challenged recently because it's very clear people on the left recognize what a phony she is. She basically does everything against their own values.
Thank you very much for watching this portion of our Project Sentinel midterm election special for 2022. If you want to catch the whole thing, it's exclusively on our Patreon channel. Join that, patreon.com/thought2action. That's patreon.com/thought2action. Also catch up with Project Sentinel on our website, projectsentinel.net. Once again, thank you very much for watching.